13, letting the guilty off the hook. Or 15, relieving that person from taking responsibility for what they did. So although you have, on the one hand, you're dismissing, canceling, and setting people free, there still are consequences of wrongdoing that need to be dealt with. And balancing those two things is
challenging.
And not, challenging.
It's letting the guilty off the hook, taking them off your hook and putting them on God's hook. That was such a big help to me, that illustration, that like even in Romans 12, it's not ours to avenge, because we won't do it justly, and we will not do it righteously, because it will be done in the flesh. But if we can give them to God and pray over the situation, but then still trying to maneuver that territory of balance where you're not enabling bad behavior, which is a hard thing to do. Yes, Raymond?
It occurs to me that if you say, I forgive, and it's followed by the word but, then you really haven't forgiven. When we forgive, we're giving it up. We're handing it over to God.
Yeah.
And saying, you know, I'm forgiving this person, and God's going to have to deal with them, because I'm not going to carry this can anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is one over there that says forgiveness is not conditional. That's where you're talking about, I'll forgive them if, or I'll forgive them but. I'll forgive them if they stop doing that.
Then you haven't really forgiven them.
And that's where it makes it so hard inside of a marriage, is that we keep doing the things we don't want to do. That's the nature of human beings. And so when you're doing life with that other person, even though they said that they were sorry, and even if they may have even asked forgiveness, but then if they repeat it again, you know, like in 1 Corinthians 13, it says, love does not keep a record of wrongs. And that's really a difficult thing to do. You're saying, Susan, to have that balance of keeping a very short list and addressing things as they happen versus beginning to compile your case against the other one. You know, I can get upset with Herb and go, well, when you did this, and I'm talking about 5 years ago. Whereas just staying with the current and addressing it quickly, and rather than, well, not bringing it up, withdrawing, hoping the behavior will change. But boy, Heidi, if it happens again, I'm going to go back and pull up the list of the times before.
When I got fired from a job and I was really angry at my boss,
Yes.
and this woman said, she gave me a piece of paper that said forgiveness is a choice.
Yeah.
Attitude was, as long as I haven't forgiven somebody, then they still have some control over me.
Absolutely. Huge amount.
And so in the act of forgiving is releasing me from their control.
Yeah.
Said when that applies to a marriage situation,
Yeah, it's devastating. Yeah.
We're supposed to love unconditionally. And you know, the way that has played itself out for me is stop keeping score. As long as I'm thinking, well, I did these things, or I had these really nice thoughts and about her, but she hasn't said those nice things to me. So, you know, I'm keeping a record, and you know, when you're keeping score in a situation like that, that's not unconditional. That is conditional.
Forgiveness is not a noun, it's a verb. You know, on this list, it said it's not a one-time decision. It's a decision you are making daily, moment by moment. Am I going to hold on to this, or am I going to release it? Am I going to bring up the past, or am I going to let go of the past? To the struggle of the flesh and the spirit. In the flesh, you just really want to nip that behavior in the bud. And plus, I want to get even. I'm going to be totally honest. If you hurt me, just watch. It's coming, because I want you to hurt as much as you hurt me. But it just like you were saying, Raymond, then you're on opposite teams, and you're really on being totally manipulated by the enemy because you're fighting against each other instead of him.
Just address this with, I think it was Peter who said something like, and maybe it wasn't about forgiveness, but I think it applies, where he said, should I forgive this person 7 times?
70
And Jesus replied, no, 70 times 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of flies in the face of the conventional wisdom that I have always used, which is, if you hurt me, shame on you. If you hurt me once, shame on you. If you hurt me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
In forgiving someone and then trusting that person.
Yeah.
And, and Herb, when
good
you were
point.
thinking about, there's somebody who's hurt you and you just don't want to forgive them. And I wonder if maybe you can forgive them, but you just can't trust them again.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not be trustworthy. So, we're not commanded to trust everybody.
Love somebody without trusting them.
You could.
I had a thought about this a little while ago. You were talking about how we're on the same team and
Mm-hmm.
we are behaving to resolve problems because being on the same team. But what happens when someone betrays you is they've chosen not to be on your team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to treat them like somebody who's not on your team and either absence yourself from them or ask them to go away until they decide to be on your team again. That's what's happened with us. I mean, Susan has said, I love you, but I can't trust you. So, there are consequences. And until I feel like I can trust you, we're going to have to do some different stuff.
Okay.
And I think that's a loving thing to do. It's not a failure to forgive. It's forgiving, but then, behaving in a way that moves us forward instead of back.
Do that. You're fighting for the relationship.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You're saying, I'm not satisfied with a relationship where we can't trust each other. I'm fighting for a relationship where there is trust, but we're going to have to back away and start rebuild. You can't repair trust. You basically have to totally rebuild it.
Trust in the bathtub. You need to
Give
tell
it to us, Susan.
I haven't.
Well, it's not my illustration, but we went to a marriage counselor years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And we were talking about the trouble in our marriage. And he rightly could see that, I did not trust Raymond. His work to do to regain trust. He said, trust is a feeling, and if I'm the offended party and I've been hurt and I don't trust him, then he's got to do work to get me back to a level of comfortability of where I do trust him. And this counselor used the analogy of when you want to take a bath and be comfortable, you have to have a certain amount of water in the bathtub. If you've just got that much water in the tub, you are not going to be comfortable. There's not the trust isn't enough. Just the feeling isn't good enough. When you've got enough water in the tub to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the trust level has built up.
But how do you get water in the tub?
And I can't do it. I can't put the water in my tub. That's his job.
A spoonful at a time.
There's no bucket.
Right.
And you've got to be sure that the plug is sealed.
You have to have a restart.
Because every time
the seal gets broken,
then you go back to zero again.
Rebuilding trust is one spoonful at a time. And so you can't expect your wife to trust you tomorrow for a betrayal today. It may be next year.
It's not up to the person that has been wounded to rebuild the trust. It's the job of the person that wounded to rebuild the trust. Yeah, that's excellent.
Couples have that same problem because they have their own rules, and then they come into a marriage and they success because they're 35 by that time, and they've been surviving for 35 years on their rules, and they've worked, and in fact they've gone through really hard times and it worked. Then all of a sudden they come into a marriage, and in 1 second, all of a sudden now you have to go with a whole new set of rules that nobody tells you what the rules are. So you just go with your old rules. Well, that's called independence. And when you do that, that's not coming together. And so, what your feeling was that, hey, I don't believe in the rules, or I'm going to go with my rules. That's great, but it just doesn't work in a relationship. So nobody teaches you how to mesh two different two different people into a relationship when they've been so successful by themselves.
I remember with my mother, she gave us the silent treatment if she got mad at us. In other words, she could go a week and not speak to you. But you didn't know exactly what you had done that was wrong because she never told you. But you did know she was upset. And I remember talking with my sisters when we were older, and every one of us said, I will never do that to my kids. And guess what? That's exactly what we did. That was my way. If I got mad at you, I would give you the silent treatment. I did the very thing. I became my mother. I did the very thing I hated because I held on to it. That's the thing, when you don't forgive, you will become the very thing that you did not forgive because you've held on to it. So you don't get better, you just get worse. Like Raymond was saying, you end up being the one that is injured. But then the other part of it is, when it says, beware that you don't have a root of bitterness because it will spring up and defile many. Well, when you don't forgive, guess who gets the resentment? Not the person that you're mad at.
I'm reminded.
Just your whole family and the people you love and do life with.